freedom. That's a very important word, isn't it? Do all of you like freedom? Well, of course, who wouldn't like freedom? You get to do what you want to do most of the time. And you get to come to school and learn, and you get to grow up and make your dreams come true. Well, unfortunately in America at that time, there were over 4 million people who were not free. And of course, those were my ancestors. They came from Africa. And, well, slavery, where one person can own another person like they're a table or a house or a car. Of course, they didn't have cars in those days. But there were people here in America who believed that freedom was the most important thing and that all people should be free. And so they, people of different races, different colors, different backgrounds, different religions, came together and they formed the Underground Railroad. So the Underground Railroad wasn't a train, it was people. And of course, there were people who were working for freedom. Now, I want you to say that word freedom for just this moment. Just this moment. In saying this word, you can use your outside voice. Okay, so before we do that, I have to tell you teachers to cover their ears. And then I'm going to count to 3, and I want you to say that word freedom with your outside voice, okay? Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that was amazing. We won't do that again. Let's say it another way. Take out one fist. Take out another fist. Cross your fists at the wrist like you have some chains on them. And when I count to 3, you're going to open up your wrist right to the width of your shoulders. And we are going to say that word, not using our outside voices. We'll just speak the word freedom. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Freedom! Now, the people who were in slavery, well, they didn't just come here with no ideas or no, they came here across the ocean. The journey across the ocean was long and it was hard, and many of them did not survive. But when they got here, they remembered that they had history, culture, and tradition. What they have? History, culture, and tradition. They had things that they've been doing for thousands of years. And one of those things was they loved to sing. So, as they tried to get to freedom, one of the things that helped them on their journey was that they were able to make up songs and sing them to remind them of important things. Here's one of the songs. I'm on my way, to freedom land. I'm on my way to freedom land. I'm on my way to freedom land. And then we sing this last part together, and it goes like this. 1, 2, 3. I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my way. Now you're singing very well. Sit up a little straighter. 1, 2, 3. I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my way. I tell you, let's do something special. Take out one hand. And when we say the word yes, you're going to go, yes. Let's do that together. 1, 2, 3. Yes! Oh, we can do better than that. 1, 2, 3. Yes! Put up your hand. Are you happy to come to school every day and learn really great things? Yes! Hands up. Do you have the best teacher and principal in the world? Yeah! Do you love to come to lunch and eat broccoli, cauliflower, and squash? Yeah! Wait a minute. All right, well, that's freedom, isn't it? So let's sing that song together. I'm on my way to freedom land. I'm on my way. To freedom land. I'm on my way. To freedom land. Together. I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my way. Hey, oh, we'll do it again. I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my way. I'm on my way to freedom land. I'm on my way. To freedom land. I'm on my way to freedom land. I'm her about their job, and Minty did a good job too, except sometimes she would pick up the rock and throw it as far as she could. Was that a good idea? No, because you just have to go over there and get the rock. And they would say, Minty, stop. And so they thought, well, maybe we'll find her another job. And so they found her a job. They had traps down by the river, and they would catch animals. Remember, they're trying to get enough to eat. And so they would say, when she was about 7 years old, Minty, we want you to go down to the river and check to see if there are animals in the trap. And she would run down to the river, and she would see that there maybe were or not, but she would see the river, and she loved the water. So she would get in the water, and she'd splash around, and then she'd be sick. And then they said, we can't trust her not to go in the water. That's not the job for Minty. Well, they tried job after job after job, but finally, when she was older, she went out to work in the fields like everybody else, and she was very strong, even though she really wasn't that tall. And Araminta, well, she was very free-spirited. She wanted to be free. Oh, they all wanted to be free. Mr. Brodus, the master, was not a kind man. He would often beat Araminta, sometimes for no reason at all. And then one day when she was a teenager, she was about 16 years old, she didn't know it, but Mr. Brodus was having trouble keeping the farm. You see, money was tight. So he said to Araminta, you like to go where you want to go. You go into town and find yourself some work. But you're going to pay me that money. Every penny you make, you're going to pay me. Well, Araminta, she didn't like having to pay the money that she made, but of course he was her master. She had no choice. But she loved being free to walk into town. Well, she used the middle name that was her mother's name, and that name was Harriet. She used the last name of her husband, who she was briefly married to. He was John Tubman. And Harriet Tubman is famous to us because she, like the workers on the Underground Railroad, said, slavery is wrong, and I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm going to do as much as I can to make sure that no one is a slave. I'm tramping, tramping, trying to make heaven my home. I'm tramping, tramping, trying to make heaven my home. I'm tramping, tramping, trying to make heaven my home. I'm tramping, tramping, trying to make heaven my home. Well, the Underground Railroad was not a train, it was people. And just like those people, the reason that we study about that time in history is because we have to remember that working for freedom and justice is an important thing, not just then, but also now. So boys and girls, I'm going to ask you to sit up, take a nice deep breath, and I'm going to ask you to take out your hands, warm them up, and give a big round of applause to your parents, your principal, and your teachers for making sure that you have opportunities to learn. And I want you to take a nice deep breath and with as much energy as you can say thank you to your teachers. Thank you. Take out your hands, warm them up. And now I want you to give a round of applause to some of my favorite people. And that would be, you don't know who yet. Give a round of applause to yourselves for being such a wonderful audience this morning. From a very early age, of course, she had to work, because if you were born into a family as a slave, well, as soon as you were able to work, you were working. When she was really young, her master punished her in a way. Punished her in a lot of ways. He didn't like Araminta. He thought she was too free-spirited. She was about 6 years old, and her master grabbed her one day and took her in the house, and he said, my wife has a job for you. And at 6 years old, one of her jobs after a day of work was to watch the master's baby at night. Watch the master's baby at 6 years old. She was responsible for rocking the cradle if the baby woke up. What a job for a 6-year-old. She tried her best to stay awake, but so many nights she was just so tired. Oh, it was so hard to stay up, and she tried. And sometimes her sisters would come and they would help her. But the master didn't want her to have any help. One night she was all by herself, and she fell asleep. And she had a dream that she would remember for the rest of her life. She told this dream to one of her biographers late in life who took her story because she never learned to read and write. But she was one of the smartest people ever. She said she had this dream that there were some tall women and they were standing at a great distance, but she could see their faces and they could see her, and they were smiling at her. And even though she didn't know them, they didn't work on the plantation with her. They called her name. They said, Araminta, come across. And she looked, and there was a very deep hole between the women and herself in this dream. And she looked and she said, I can't, it's too deep. And they said, Araminta. And they kept smiling, come across. She looked, she said, I'm too small. I can't get over. And they smiled and they said, Araminta, you come across. And they added one thing. They said, bring your people with you. And as soon as they said those words, she woke up. You know how you wake up in a dream? You don't know whether it's real or a dream. She knew immediately. She looked to see if the baby was still asleep, and it was. And then she began to think, who were those women? And what did they mean? Come across and bring your people with you. She would not know the meaning of that dream until years later. She stayed in Philadelphia for 2 years. But over those 2 years, her heart was so heavy because she realized every day her brothers and sisters were still enslaved. Her mother and father were enslaved. She missed them so much, and she thought, what can I do? And then it came to her, that dream. Araminta, come across and bring your people with you. She knew what she was supposed to do. She was supposed to go back. She'd made the journey once. She could do it again. So she did. Oh, she was very careful because she knew she was still an escaped slave. She went back and she got back to the farm of the Brothers plantation, and she climbed up in a tree and she sang a song. Dark and thorny is the pathway where the sinner makes his way. When people heard those words, they heard that voice. They knew who it was. One of her brothers said, Minty, is that you? She came down and the family was so happy to see her. She said, I'm not back to stay. I've come to take you with me. And two of her brothers said they would go. But several other slaves in the area said they would also go. They said, would you take us? And she said, yes. She took them all the way to Pennsylvania. She came back. She went again. She came back, she went again. Now she had taken several of her family members and about 30 or 40 other people. And now people began to talk about her every time she came. They began to call her a different name. They called her Moses. As a matter of fact, the masters began also to talk about her. They knew now that there was a woman who was coming in to their area, stealing their property. And they began to put up posters, wanted dead or alive, Araminta Ross. She escaped and now she's stealing slaves. You think that was going to stop her? No, nothing was going to stop her because she remembered that dream. Come across and bring your people with you. Well, she made about 11 trips. She personally took about 100 people. She brought many of them right here to New York State. She was in this area a number of times. She came to Albany. She came to Saratoga. Well, by now, her fame had spread far and wide. She decided to use a different name, especially since those posters said that Araminta was stealing slaves. She decided to use her mother's name. Well, actually, it was her middle name, too, one middle name she'd never used. She decided that would be the new name that she used. And for a brief time before she was here, she actually got married to a man named John. She decided to use his last name since it was her married name. And that is the name we know of this extraordinary conductor on the Underground Railroad, who from a very small girl knew that she wanted to be free and who saw in her dream a way to do it. Oh, we don't know her as Araminta Ross. We know her as the brave and courageous conductor, Harriet Tubman. Come on up, I got a lifeline. Come on up to this train of mine. They said her name was Harriet Tubman, and she drove the Underground Railroad. At the end of his very famous I Have a Dream speech, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used words from this song to remind people of the Underground Railroad and of how important it is to work for justice and 1, 2, 3. Freedom! Help me out like this. Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty we're free at last, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty we're free at last, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty we're free at last, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty we're free at last. Now can you clap like this? Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty we're free at last, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty we're free at last, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty we're free at last, free at last.